Okay, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Accommodation Show. This week, you're in for an absolute treat, as I'm really glad to welcome Michael O'Connell to the show. Welcome, my friend.
Thanks for having me, Bart. It's a pleasure to be here. I know we've been trying for a while to get this scheduled, but we've both been incredibly busy traveling around, heading to conferences, so everything's in a bit of a lull. So I'm happy to be here. Not in a lull. Take it back. I'm working.
Sure have been chasing you for a while, buddy. I think I might have at least messaged you half a dozen times saying, get on the Accommodation Show. People need to hear your story. And look, what I like about our relationship is I think the first time we met was when you came over to Australia. Is that right? Like for Strive?
That's incorrect. We met at a party in Vegas.
Holy moly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you might not
right.
remember. That was fun.
Okay.
That was
So then we
actually a
met
really
in
great.
Vegas, and then
Yeah,
it would have been about a year and a bit later before you came over to Australia for Strive.
that sounds about right because that would have been October. That was Verma in Vegas, which was an excellent conference, and it's there again. Are you heading there
Yes.
this year?
Yes, I am going to go this year, of course. My flight's already booked. I'm probably one of the first people that booked their flights and was ready to go. Just need to get away find a way to get on the stage, but that's another episode or another thing to talk about. But look, what I was wanting to get at is it's really nice to go from doing different events to then building a relationship, and now we can talk to each other in a much different way and a very familiar, friendly way, which is something which is great about this industry. And if anybody doesn't know Mike, that's one of your biggest assets, is actually being quite real, authentic, and genuine, and talking to people in the right way. And I'm going to keep on going and give people a bit of context as to what we're going to talk about today. So Michael's had different jobs within the industry over the past, 5-10 years, and now has started a startup with a few other people, but he's kind of the driver of it, called Happy Guests. If you haven't seen it, jump on the website, happyguest.AI.
You can go to happyguestofficial.com. I can get into why we differentiate the marketing site and the product. I cannot stand app.happyguest or platform.happyguest. So I want
Sure.
that product to live in that perfect URL. But that's just me.
Amazing. And look, I think the branding looks really, really sexy. It's a great product and great feedback. Folks, if you haven't seen the product, get on it. But I thought what would be useful, because I know that you've done podcasts out there, and if people want to look it up, they can look it up. I thought it would be really cool to talk to you about your journey as a startup founder. I believe this is your first one, and I'm sure that there's different things that you've learned along the way. And I want you to share some of those insights with our audience. But before we get into it, Michael, tell everyone a little bit about yourself, who you are, a bit about your background, and then lead us into Happy Guest.
Yeah, so these are tough questions. I normally don't get really deep throughout the day, so we're going to try to answer these. I guess like my journey into the short-term rental space, like many other folks, was kind of accidental. I got into another startup when I was living in South Florida, which kind of took off, which was awesome, called Turno. And, was there for a number of years and eventually got into, building out Happy Guest. Again, I've been in the industry for a while. So it's been one of those things that feels like been forever, but it hasn't been, that many years. But I've seen the industry really, really change, over the past couple of years. So the operators that we deal with, generally, there's a there's been a huge shift, and I really enjoy working with the smaller operators, which has kind of been my bread and butter. Where at Verma and some of these events is usually these large property management companies, and
Sure.
over time, what I've seen is these people that what I engaged with years and years ago have grown those businesses from 10 listings all the way to 200, 300,
Yeah.
and they're all kind of part of the pack now. So seeing growth with our clients has been awesome for me.
Yeah, I imagine so. So you're in the industry for a while, you've seen all the changes that have happened. Then you start thinking about Happy Guest and solving a problem, and start to build that product and that company and those ideas. Do you consider yourself to be an entrepreneur? Is that kind
I
of
wouldn't even say an entrepreneur. Like, what I enjoy is building solutions that help people have an easier time, right? That's as simple as it is. What we try to accomplish with Happy Guest is creating a tool that automates, at least one aspect or many aspects that can make you spend more time with your clients, with your guests. That's kind of the goal, is building stuff that, people actually use and enjoy using. Right. So
Yeah.
when they log in, they're logging into your brainchild, right? And that's pretty special. So, when we have, new features in development that just start as a Figma, when we release them into production, like after going through UAT, it's just amazing. And I'll get calls from clients like, oh, I really love this new feature. Over the past couple months, we've just been rolling out, all these new features within the product. And it's funny because I actually have this demo, like, an HTML demo from the early days that I was like, showing people, like stumbled upon it the other day. And I was like, what is this? This doesn't even look anything like our product.
Yeah.
And, it's just little things by little things that have come along the way. It's been really enjoyable.
Let's talk about the product in that way, because one of the things that I feel that people make a lot of mistakes on, and I was actually talking to a friend this morning about starting a business and getting going, is that people get really fixated on kind of completing a product or having it ready or testing it, improving it, rather than just getting it out there, and not understanding that that getting going is the most important part, and then after that you can then sort of improve on it. But if you don't get it out there and get it going, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. When you first started, you said you had the HTML, um, what we call, I imagine, would be an MVP, right? Minimum viable product. What did you learn from that sort of getting started part, and what mistakes did you make?
Well, I mean, I could go on and on. There's been many of mistakes, but I think kind of my team, Kanan and Rebecca, especially, we are very cognizant of how products work and how they're going to be received by our end user. And the big thing for us is the guest is the one that's, in our platform. It's not a tool that the PM is in or the operator. So the guest, this is guest facing. So it needs to be perfect, right? So we actually, like, every single guest that comes and stays in our place in Fort Lauderdale, we have 8 units there, they're going through a version of Happy Guest that is not even on the streets yet, because I'd rather screw something up with my own guests than give it out to the public. So I think that's like a really great advantage, where we have a lot of guests run through. We're testing, A/B testing, running different, features that are in our quiver, and the things that are working really well, then we put into production. So it's almost like we have real life guinea pigs. And I think that makes it really special as well. And everyone on the team comes from some sort of a hospitality background. I have Rebecca on the team, who's a tried and true property manager. Kanan also comes from the hospitality tech side. Ben Coleman's a revenue research guy, big revenue management, got out of a property management company with 250 units. So everyone at our company has, like, that tech background or is tech adjacent, and has also rented a room for a living, which I think makes us pretty special.
It's incredibly useful to have people within that really understand the industry and that understand the ins and outs of how things are meant to work and how the products would fit into their business as they're going. But I want to go back to that kind of MVP stage a little bit. So you've got that minimum viable product, or that those tests that you're showing people and you're saying, hey, this is what it actually looks like. How critical was it to actually get that out to market as quick as you could, or did you spend a lot of time really refining it and making sure that it's absolutely perfect before getting it out the door? And are there any regrets in terms of that process?
That's a loaded question, because
Sure.
myself, I'm the type that's like, let's get this out here. But my business partners, especially Kanan, he has kind of gone through this before, and it's, you don't get a a second chance at a first impression, right? So if we were to throw something out that was buggy or didn't have that perfection, especially something that's guest facing, or anything, I've seen it before too, where companies will bull rush to get a product out and there's a lot of hype around it, and then it either doesn't work or there's a major flaw in the product, and then that level of trust kind of goes away. So we're very, very careful, and I think it's me that needs to be batted down with a bat, or batted down with a stick
Mm.
rather, because I get very jumpy. I'm like, let's launch this, let's do this, come on, we're ready to go, we're ready to go. And then I need to get brought back down to planet Earth, where it's like, listen, we need to take our time and make sure that this feature is perfect for each and every guest. We need to think about all the variables. Now, it's tricky because time is always of the essence in a startup world, especially if you're bootstrapped like we are. We don't
Mm.
have any outside investors. It's all our money, going into this product. And I think that makes it special too, because it's literally like a child for us, right? So, we want to give our customers in the market, the best possible product, I'd say.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, you do need to keep moving, right? If you don't keep moving, then you're gonna run out of cash and the business won't survive. So you do need to push out products, even though they might not be absolutely perfect. But what
Yeah.
I'm hearing you say is that you would push it out, or if you had it your way, you would just push things out. But you do have some checks and balances. But at the end of the day, everything you release isn't gonna be perfect before it gets out the door, right?
No, it's not. And that's why there's a difference between your beta users and the actual free market, right? So we were lucky enough in Happy Guests, actually, this Saturday is what we're calling our beta birthday. So we had a few hundred properties that we had friends, people that trusted us in the industry, that actually beta tested our product, and our back end wasn't even functional at that point. So it was us in the background, kind of Wizard of Oz action, pulling the strings and making sure everything on the back end was perfect, where the guest facing side was functional. Now, it would have been very expensive to build the back end and the front end at the same time. So luckily, you need to have the concept and people that do trust you as a person if you're going to go that route. And I am very, very thankful, for all of those folks. In fact, I'll give Lindsay a shout out. She was our first check-in, and it's really special because that's coming up on a year, and it's crazy. But yeah, I mean, having people in your corner, people that, understand what you're trying to do. I think if you have an idea, it's tricky because people think, oh, I have the best idea ever. I don't want to tell anybody, right?
Sure.
But there's got to be people that are in your corner that trust you. I mean, anyone that you're making sign an NDA, maybe they're not the best person, but just kind of throw it out at other people, get opinions. I would say that's the best advice. In fact, probably shouldn't talk about this, but there's a feature set that was part of Happy Guest in the original rollout. Like, it was a huge component, and we tested it and kind of just in that UAT beta, not with actual customers, and it just didn't really kind of fit into what we were trying to accomplish. So we put it on the back burner, and like part of the whole initial MVP had this specific feature set in it. It's not there, right? So you kind of need to realize, like, what you think might be the whole enchilada, the whole package, might not be it, right? So listen to feedback. That's huge.
How far down the process did you guys get before you realized that that's not where you guys are going with it? And obviously, at some stage, it was like, this is a great idea, and the mistake was thinking it's a good idea, and then deciding that it's no longer good. How far down did you get before you were like, we need to bin this? Because it's a brave decision as well, right?
Yeah.
To sort of
No, I
undo
mean,
what you thought was the right thing to do in the first place.
yeah, I mean, you need to listen to feedback, and you need to see, where friction points are. If something is causing, that end user friction, then maybe it's not the best idea, or maybe it needs to be reworked. And don't ever try to force anything. I think when you try to force something or get something out the door fast, it might be, yes, sigh of relief. But if you put something out that's got, bugs in it, or, has flaws in it, operational flaws in it, it's going to come back and bite you in the butt.
Yeah. Yeah. Gotcha. Okay. I want to talk to you about runway sales, budgets, the money side of it,
Yeah.
because it's pretty terrifying when you start a new
Yeah.
business. If you're doing it without, venture backing, you can get friends and family to sort of give you money,
Hmm.
but then you've got a limited amount of time to start to bring money into the business and keep it afloat. And there's always ways to spend money.
There are. There
What?
are. And no, go ahead. I thought that was the question. Is all I can think about is how
Yeah.
I was living in a very expensive apartment, and then, I had to make some, decisions where it's like, okay, there's going to be a long period of time where there's not income, and,
Mm.
gave that up. I had a boat. I sold the boat. Like, literally loaded my dog up in a Jeep and drove back to Rhode Island, where I grew up, and living above my parents' garage still to this day. Like,
There you go.
it's a true story. And I'm grateful that I had that opportunity, right? Bit
Mm,
humbling too,
sure.
because it's like, okay, you can't do this, you can't do that. And I think it's crazy. Like, you're at a company and you have a nice salary and everything's fine, but there's that like urge to like, you know, start something and be a part of a journey and really build something. So if you get that bug, you need to kind of believe in yourself and kind of test it too, right? Same thing, going and asking like, is this a good idea? Like, am I in a position to do this? And if you want to start something, start planning, ahead of time. Like, I didn't wake up one day and say, I'm going to start a company, right? There's a lot of planning that goes into that as well. And you need good people around you. There are examples of, solo entrepreneurs. I mean, I'm talking to one right now. But, having a team and you get down this rabbit hole of craziness, you might be lost, right? So having people in your corner that you're working and building with, you challenge each other, you make each other work harder. That has been pivotal to our success. Like, we're a team of, I would say, high achievers that, really want to build something great.
Yeah.
And we've all had times where like we think it's the best path forward, any idea, and then all of a sudden the other three of us are like, I don't know about that. And it really, really helps to have people around there to ground you a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. That's something that I never really had. I didn't have sort of the foundational elements. I didn't have co-founders or people on that sort of level sharing equity in what I was building. But one of the things that I noticed very quickly is that as I was building it, I never really had to, as an employee, have kind of networks or really strong networks. But as I started building it, I started talking to people, and there were people that had so much information that I needed from them. I needed to know how their businesses run or how things are structured. And well, there were so many people that were willing to actually just step up and to help and to kind of get involved and do things. So leveraging those networks was a big sort of fundamental stage for us. But I want to go back for a sec to the moving in upstairs. Is it upstairs? Upstairs at your parents. And that would have been, of
Garage,
course, the garage. Yeah,
garage.
nice.
See,
Garage.
you fit in down under.
Garage. House and garage. Anyway, so you've moved back in with them and you were living in the expensive apartment. You would have obviously done some projections and some numbers at some point to kind of have a rough idea as to how this thing's going to work before doing, taking some monumental shifts. And then at what point did you realize that you're going to have to downsize everything to give you more runway to be able to make things work?
I mean, right away, really, it's like, okay, you know, this is my life. And if I'm going to do this, I got to go all in. And I mean, maybe for me, it's like, okay, I know that if this doesn't work out and it hits the fan, thankfully I'm in an industry where there's a lot of jobs and I've made a lot of, great connections in the
Mm,
network. And I could probably say, okay, I tried this, it didn't work. Please give me a job. So that sense of fear, that's kind of always like, what would drive it. It's like, okay, if this doesn't work out, you're not a failure, at all, right? You're going to have more respect, because you tried. Right. So that was just kind of what drove the whole, this is worth doing.
I find that when I think of Runway, and so runway is just basically how long you can survive for with the cash that you have in the bank, and potentially what revenue is going to come in. And you go, well, I can survive for a month, 2 months, 6 months, 12 months. And what you're doing by moving into your parents is you're just saying, hey, rather than having 1 or 2 months, I've now got 12 months. Of potentially giving this a go. And then as you've got more cash, then your runway increases. And then what happens as an entrepreneur, you go and you bring in more staff and more teams and you shorten the runway again. And then you kind of keep on growing. So it's kind of this perpetual cycle. When you start a startup, it's really hard because you've got no idea where your runway is. You've got no idea what revenue is going to come in. You can start to write things down on a piece of paper as to, hey, if we get 100 properties on in the first month, or 50 or 20 or 10 or 1,000 in the first month, you can start to sort of guess. But there's not only that, are they going to stick with the platform? Is it all going to work? Are you going to get all the money? What other expenses are going to come up? Did you map it all out? At least have a skeleton of what you thought it would do? Was
Oh
it
yeah.
you?
Yeah.
Was it the whole team that was working
The
on
whole
this?
team. We are lucky that we have some great financial minds on the team, and everything was mapped out. We had that break even number on, paying off the cost of the original development in mind as a goal. And then, after that, there's always that goal for how many properties can we get by the end of the year? How many can we get, each month? We look at, different metrics on, listings that are active. The big thing to remember too in our space is seasonality, right? Especially in the States. We have clients in, Maine that have a 14-week season. And our product is based off of consumption, right? So we
Good.
take a percentage of transactions. So there's a lot of that modeling and forecasting that we're still learning, right? You need to have a good idea of like, okay, if I'm starting this thing, where do I hit critical mass, right?
Mm.
Now, there's other routes you can go where it's you come up with an MVP that's a rockin' MVP, and I've seen this done a ton of times as well, where it's you come up with something that's game changing, or it doesn't even have to be, and you go the venture capital
Sure.
seed route as well. Now, our team kind of decided, because everyone's pretty much been in that startup environment, that we had the ability to kind of pull together and build out a plan where if we hit our targets, that runway would, eventually turn into profitability. And it is a struggle. I'm telling you, there are times where I burnt out
Mm.
working way too much. And thankfully, there's team members like my co-founders, like we all kind of keep each other in check. I think it's just human nature, if you're obsessed with your product and you care so much about it, to really dive in and almost kind of kill yourself finding a way to make it work. And if you don't kind of have those checks and balances in place, it's not healthy. And I've been a victim of it. People on my team have been a victim of it. So it's really kind of finding that balance of like working your hardest, but don't kill yourself doing it. Right.
Yeah. So I do want to address burnout and that sort of thing because, I really wanted to talk about some of I think with this episode, hopefully if someone's looking at building their own business or starting things up, it's going to give them some ideas in the background of things to think about.
Hmm.
And I think that burnout is a really serious one. And I think that it doesn't just affect founders, I think everybody can get burnt out if they don't have the right measures in place to keep things under control or to have the right balance within their life. But I just want to finish off on the numbers side. So you guys would have put together some projections and some ideas as to where you want to go. Did it pan out exactly as you thought it would?
Yeah, it did.
That's God,
Just being
normally
honest.
never does.
I know,
Wow.
and I don't want to like toot my own horn because things can change in a heartbeat. There were some models that maybe we didn't hit in certain regards, but everyone buckled down and did their job, and kind of when everyone's in sync, I think things kind of work out. There were times where it's scary. Don't get me wrong, where it's like, okay, like how are we going to do this? We're going to do that. Like the other thing that's crazy is that kind of change in lifestyle too. And in our industry, if anyone listening is a part of it, like the conference circuit's, really important. And I think in my head, it just was like, oh, these are almost free to attend. But when you're paying for it, right,
Mm.
it's a whole different ballgame, right? Like to just travel early days to attend these conferences, I'm using all like points and, sleeping on couches. Like Ben and I, went to a conference and we were literally sharing a pull-out couch because we needed to save money. And I still do that. I quite enjoy it.
You haven't
So
shared with me yet, buddy.
I don't know, Bart. We could be, I don't know. Next year we're doing 3 conferences down in
It's a
Southern
long way to
Hemisphere.
come from Australia. By the time I get there, it's in broke, right?
You can come sleep above my parents' garage with me, Bart, anytime.
It's very real. It's very real what you're talking about. And in the age of social media and everything that we do, then it's easy to glam it up. And I think one of the lessons for me has been that if you wanted to travel, Mike, and stay in a hotel, and if you wanted to do it in a nicer way, you could probably do it, right? The issue that you have is that as you do that, you're taking away from money that you might need later on, or your runway later on. And that's you have to just be wise with every dollar that you spend so that you have opportunity to do more later. And when the multiples are better and when you've got more money, then you can afford to do those things in a much more holistic way, which is better for you and better for the business. Now, I think we've done the numbers thing. But then in terms of toll, so there's the cost of that. And then you started talking about, and I think this is where I'd like to wrap us up because we like to keep these around about half an hour. But there's the expectation of, your revenue, your numbers, how the business is going to grow and everything like that. But the one part that until you've done it at least once, you don't really see how much toll it's going to take on you, right? Did somebody tell you how many hours you're going to have to work a day? And the rest of the team as well, right? So that should have been budgeted in, but I imagine that you didn't even think of it, right? Or you knew there was going to be a lot, but do you really budget in and go, this is how many hours a week I have to work to make this thing work?
Yeah, I mean, you can budget it all you want, and maybe I'm just wrong on this, but it's so, so hard to like stop yourself, right? That self-control where it's like, you know what? I need a break. I need to take some time. I need to take a few days off. It's really, really hard to, force yourself to do that because it's a team effort, right? In a group startup environment. I remember Kanan went on a, vacation to Iceland for only a couple days. He'd be calling in. I'm like, no, we got this, we got this. But then it's like I go away and I feel guilty, and I'm like, I need to be on this call. So just being cognizant of, everyone's got your back at your organization, or your team is wonderful. That is always there, but in your crazy mind, you're like, I need to constantly kind of be participating, be help like and helping because we need to get to this point. But then you get to that point and it's like, we need to get to this point and then we need to get to that point. So just kind of taking a step back and, assessing what's going on in life because you can get really carried away where you're working 16, 17, 18 hours a day. We were early on building listings until 5 in the morning and then waking up at 7. Like, I mean, there were days where weeks, months that were crazy. Not gonna, not gonna sugarcoat it. It's not all glitz and glamour, but I would not ever do it another way, right? Like I have no
Mm.
regrets. And it's troublesome because it's kind of unhealthy to say that's the way to do it. Like if I had to do it again,
I'm going to
I
stop you
would.
on that. I'm going to stop you on that because we're going to wrap up and I'm going to ask you this one question.
Okay, I'm
If you
ready.
were to talk to Michael at the start of his journey with this company, what is the three things that Michael would tell himself at this
Oof.
stage, or from now, what you know now, what would you tell yourself to do differently?
Well, one, never doubt your team, and I never ever doubted them, on a, macro level, but there's like things that would come up where it's like, I really think that, that shouldn't be this way. And I'd fight it and then kind of back down. And then a week later, be like, shit, I was wrong. So, not so much never doubt your team. Really think that's not kind of what I was getting at. It's more never be like reactive. I have a tendency to look at something and make a decision right away. Right. I originally, and I'll throw this out there, we have very, very loud, energetic branding. When I first saw it, I was like, I don't know if this is, and now I love it every day. Oh my
Yeah.
God. I was skeptical at first. Like we have this beautiful, app that the background video playing on check-in, it shits rainbows and it's lovely, right? But the first time I saw it, I'm like, I don't know, it's very different. It's a shocking, right? But that's what makes it work. So I am so grateful that I didn't fight that and be like, you know what,
Yeah.
we can't do it this way
Yeah.
because we would not be where we are. I think that's what makes it special because everyone talks about the colors, the neon. So there's times where I'm like, damn, I'm an idiot. So that's one thing. Like, trust your team, don't doubt them, and just, know that you're not the expert on everything, right? So a decision that needs to be made, if you have people kind of leaning one way. See, I have the whole team calling me now. It never ends, Bart. And just be there for them. Ben, if you're listening this later, this is why I'm not picking up.
Mr. Ben Coleman. Love that man.
Yes, 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 we love him. The second thing is, you just got to believe in yourself. There's times that, you're like, oh God, what am I doing? Why did I make this decision? And have people around you that reach out to people that believe in you. I was in positions where it's like you just feel kind of alone and you're
Mm.
not engaging friends, family, whoever it may be, significant other. Just know that there's people in your corner and don't get in your own head. That was a kind of mistake that I made along the way where you're just doubting yourself and like, did I make the wrong choice? So that's really important. And three, I should have done, God, what's the third? What would I
Let's
have?
leave it at those two. I think that they're really good.
I think no, I want to throw this in too. It's like if you're in a position, right, and you're at, a company or you're in a place in life where you have a good idea or, you want to get out on your own. Like I see a lot of people that have these ideas and they say, well, I'm not going to do it because of this, or I can't do it because of that. Reach out to an entrepreneur. I actually had the other day this younger guy that I've worked with in the past that kind of reached out to me with hey, can we meet? I have this thing going on idea, and he presented this kick-ass concept MVP. Like I won't get into detail, but he's kind of doubting himself on it, and I'm like, no, like this is rocking. Like you need to put your foot on the throttle here because if you don't build this, there's going to be someone else that does. And it's like I kick myself because I'm like, I wish I thought of that because I wouldn't be living above my parents' garage right now. It is game changing, and I think that it takes like some people to tell you that to really light that fire under your ass because like this was awesome. And he's like, I don't know if it'll work. So if you have something that you might think is it's almost like that artist that doesn't like their own work, right? So just be confident in yourself, and if it's a dumb idea, they'll probably tell you it is. So then move on to the next one. People fail a lot before they're successful.
Find your mentor, or find someone that you can talk to. Look,
Exactly.
Michael, I am going to wrap us up because we are a little bit over. Folks, if you are listening to this episode on Spotify or on iTunes, make sure you leave us a thumbs up, a review, 5 stars. Tell Michael how amazing he is for everything that he does. If you're on YouTube, then there's a subscribe button on the bottom somewhere here. Hit it, smash it, smash the thumbs up button as well. It does make a big difference to us. I do mention it every single episode because it's important that you do it. If you don't do it, then it doesn't go viral. If it doesn't go viral, no one sees it. If no one sees it, then we don't get to have other amazing guests like Michael on the show. And we want people to learn from each other. What is the best way for people to engage with you, my friend?
Yeah, go on LinkedIn, send me an email. It's Mike at Happy Guest Official. If you want to start a business and you have some idea, show it to me. I won't steal it. No, seriously, I'm here to help. Just kidding.
I'm going to use that as a soundbite for sure.
I know I won't. No, but seriously, if you're in a position where you have something, or even if you don't have something and you want advice, like whether it's me or anyone on my team, we're like here to help. I think we're genuinely good people. We care about, the industry, and we want everyone to have an opportunity to be successful. So never feel like you're stuck.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. Michael, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. I appreciate what you're doing for the industry, for yourself. I love having our conversations and keeping up to date with everything that's going on. Looking forward to seeing you in Vegas, if not before then. Take care, my friend.
Thank you, Bart. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Take care.